Welcome to another episode of Moonshots. Every week we bring you the amazing people with audacious ideas whose one single concept can change the trajectory of how humanity is going to live. This week is very special to me. This week I am bringing my mentor, the person who has the biggest influence on my life, and it is just the beginning of what we're going to do together. So welcome, Deepak Chopra.
Thank you, Naveen.
So Deepak, what is your moonshot?
My moonshot? Liberation from all human constructs.
So what does it really mean by finding the liberation from all the human constructs?
What we call everyday reality is a projection of our conditioned mind. The conditioning is very deep. It is a result of economics. You're born into a certain economic situation, race, history, nationality, religion, and everything that has been recycled since humans started to speak in stories. So about 50,000 years ago, there was something called the cognitive revolution. Mm-hmm. Up until then, there were we are told there were 8 different species of humans. Uh-huh. So we are Homo sapiens, which means the wise ones, which we were humble enough to call ourselves.
Yeah, of course.
But then we gave names to the other species. And at that time, we are also told that the leader of the pack, because humans moved like other animals, like mammals in packs, the leader of the pack could not get more than 100 people to follow him. And it was a him, because it was a hunter-gatherer environment. Till one species, us, started to develop a language for stories. Before that, the language was very simple. Mating calls, danger calls, basically food calls, survival. Mm-hmm. But then we started telling stories, and the more outrageous the story was, the bigger the following of the leader. Mm-hmm. So,
makes perfect sense in today's world.
Right. So, and that created the human experience of what we call the world. We don't question those stories. The stories were first gossip, then mythology, then theology, then religion, which is cultural mythology. So as soon as a child is born, it's already an interpreted world. And then they're squeezed into an identity, which is basically squeezed into the volume of a body in the span of a lifetime. Yeah. They have no idea even where they get ideas from. Mm-hmm. What is the source of ideas? But most ideas are recycled. 99.999% of ideas are recycled through the ecosystem that we call the human mind.
And then we build on top of them.
They evolve, but they evolve based on previous ideas.
Of course.
So real breakthroughs only occur when there's disruption.
So how do you get the freedom from all these human constructs which are created by us to begin with?
You have to go to the source of knowing and the source of experience, which is all we have. We have experience, and we interpret experience.
Give me an example of what you mean by that.
It's called transcendence. You go to, in the great wisdom traditions, all knowledge is ignorance. Because in order, the word ignorance is very interesting.
Tell me.
The more you know about a subject, the more you have to ignore everything else. So in Sanskrit, it's called avidya, absence of
knowledge.
Knowledge is ignorance. Partial knowledge is ignorance. So unless you go to not just what you know, but how do you know what you know? What is the source of it? You have to transcend every concept, every idea. You have to question your habitual certainties because, everybody is talking about from a place of certainty. Mm-hmm. But the certainty only comes from the recycling of the rush to conform.
So the fact we all believe this is a green color or this is a gold color or that's a black color or this is a pink color, there is really no color. It is a human construct we created for ourselves.
Color does not have a location in space or time. And color is not a physical entity. Color is an experience, and as an experience, it is a modification of awareness. Awareness knows itself visually as color. So if I look at any object, before I can call it an object, it's an experience. Visually, it's a shape, it's a form, and the only difference between this and this and this is the color and the border. If there wasn't any color, it would all be homogeneous.
That's right.
So the differentiation that we call objects in space-time is actually an interpretation of color and shape which do not have a location in the physical world. They're ideas, and they're as such modifications of awareness. Awareness knows itself as color visually. Awareness knows itself as sensation, as a tactile experience. Awareness knows itself as taste, smell. Awareness knows itself as everything that we perceive. But perception itself is a snapshot in consciousness which creates the subject-object split. So now suddenly there's an artificial split, me, you, book, table, when in fact it's all one thing, and it's not a thing. The essential stuff of the universe is non-stuff. And not only is it non-stuff, it is thinking non-stuff, because it cannot help interpreting its experiences.
But here's the thing, we talk about that, our brain is the one that actually, interprets the information that it's getting, the biochemically or electrically, the taste, the touch, the
There's
color.
no experience in the brain. For example, you're listening to sound right now. The brain is silent. Okay, there's no sound in the brain.
So where is that experience happening?
In consciousness. And not only is it happening in consciousness, it is generated in consciousness, it is experienced in consciousness, it is known in consciousness, it is interpreted in consciousness, and it disappears back into consciousness.
So how do we get to experience that, the thing that's happening in this consciousness which we are part of? So let's just be very clear. So we are a subset of the consciousness. We are in this one consciousness. Everything, every object, you, I, the book, the table is all part of that consciousness.
It's all part, but we are a particular mode of knowing and experience with a narrow band of activity. So the visual experience is between 300 nanometers and 800 nanometers.
Yes,
there's nothing outside that range.
That's because that's all our visual cortex.
That's all. Now we can extend that through instruments and technology. But even as we extend it, we cannot extend it into infinity, because infinity is not an experience. Infinity cannot be experienced simultaneously, everything. So it is sliced into what we call perceptual activities, which are species specific. When I was writing this book, I was looking at the experience of other species. So there's a butterfly called the painted lady. And this butterfly tastes the world through its legs. It smells the world through its antenna. It hears the world through its wings. The wings are its auditory apparatus. It has 30,000 lenses in the eyes that move like a kaleidoscope, presumably giving it a shimmering, changing experience of colors and forms. So what's that experience?
Different from us.
And we can't even remotely imagine what it is. What does the world feel like to a bat that navigates experience through the echo of ultrasound? A chameleon whose eyeballs swivel on two different axes. You can't even remotely imagine what this room would look like to a chameleon. So what we are experiencing right now is a species-specific mode of knowing, which is human. And then, of course, humans, being storytellers, they have to interpret that experience. And they interpret it in words. And words are symbols of that encapsulate what I would say a confederation of perceptual activities, and then they give a word. This is a book, this is the Vyom kit, this is a table, this is a hand. When in fact, if you just replace the word object with the word experience, then you say, what is the experience right now? Looking, it's called seeing. And seeing is experiencing colors and forms, and seeing cannot happen without a seer.
Yeah.
Now, when you say the brain does this, it's actually the current model, but how does a mechanical object made of molecules and thoughts not only have experience, because visually all that's going is colorless photons to your brain.
Yes.
All that's happening in the brain as a result of the action potential is electrochemistry. You're not experiencing that, you're experiencing this. So, now of course there are people who say that's represented in the brain in the same way that if I send you a picture or audio file, it's represented in that cryptographic code, which is a digital code of plus minus, which we created anyway.
Of course.
Okay, so we created that, the code,
Yeah.
but we also created the experience. And the representation, even though we might say there's a representation, if you ask somebody how does this represent insight, intuition, creativity, vision,
and metaphysical concepts,
metaphysical concepts, existential conundrums, the fear of death, falling in love, on and on. There's no human experience that actually can be accounted for by any brain activity. What we see in the brain are called neural correlates of consciousness, NCC. But the brain is not experiencing sound. There's no color in the brain. If you imagine a beautiful sunset or you look at a beautiful sunset, there's no image in the brain.
So here's the thing. So obviously, think of a brain as a device through which we experience our consciousness, right? So think of it as a tuner.
You can think of the brain as an instrument that localizes experience.
So in that way...
In the same way as you use a microscope or a telescope. So when I use a telescope, I can look into distance. I do that every time I look in distance, my visual apparatus changes. Okay, every time I look at objects close by, your pupils constrict. So this is all an instrument. Your body is your telescope, your microscope.
It's sensors.
It's sensors. But you are not that. You are the one who's using the instrument.
So when your brain, if you are a brain, supposedly your brain is not working, you're brain dead.
Or in a coma, or anesthesia, or dead.
So at that point, let's assume you're not dead yet, right? Now you're still, to some extent, one would you argue, are you conscious? You're not, your heart is breathing.
That's where semantics comes in. A lot of people confuse consciousness with conscious experience. So, at night you go to sleep. And there are two phases of sleep: dream sleep, where there's some activity, some excitation of consciousness. But then deep sleep, there's no activity. There's no time. There's no space. There's no experience.
So that's a pure consciousness right there.
That's pure consciousness,
right? So one of the things we were talking about earlier was that we as human beings are literally these, I know if you look at it as a computer, we are this icon through which we essentially represent our experience.
Yes, Don Hoffman has created this model where he says that biological organisms are icons on a 4D computer interface. The belly of the computer is infinite consciousness, but this icon, if you arouse it, if you excite it through its sensory apparatus, it goes to the belly of the computer, which has infinite modes of knowing and experience.
And it takes one possibility.
And it takes a narrow band of activity, and we call that reality. Now, to make this even more interesting, planet Earth is one grain of sand in all the beaches. If you thought of all the beaches
in the universe,
we are not even a grain of sand. There's 500 quadrillion grains of sand on our planet. 500 quadrillion. But there are 10 times more stars. So there are 700 sextillion stars, 2 trillion galaxies, and uncountable trillions of planets. On this one grain of sand, you have an organism called the human species, which proportionately would not even be the size of a virus. And this little organism is evoking this experience,
Yeah.
which we call the world.
Yeah.
And it says this is reality.
Yeah.
But it's a perceptual experience that we call reality. It's not fundamental reality because, as we just saw, different organisms have different realities.
So there is no reality. I mean, reality is really some
The
sense.
only reality is the field of pure consciousness, which makes experience possible. So what is that? It's a field of infinite possibilities. It's also unpredictable.
Not random. It's unpredictable doesn't mean it's random.
Actually, it's totally unpredictable.
Yeah.
So because it's creative. You see, if something is predictable, it's not creative. A predictable system is not.
Of course not.
Is not. So it's infinite possibilities. It is totally unpredictable. In fact, the higher the degree of unpredictability, the more the creativity.
Yeah, of course.
Third, it's the source of intention.
Yeah.
And also attention. I say, look here, look there. Who's doing that? What is doing that? Consciousness is doing that. And so attention and intention selectively select an experience. So it's the source of attention and intention. But it's also a field of entanglement because everything is correlated all at the same time.
And connected.
And but correlated and non-locally. Think of a human body. So how does a human body think thoughts, play a piano, kill germs, remove toxins, make a baby, digest food, pump blood, and follow the rhythms of the cosmos?
You are the doctor, tell me.
All at the same time. It has to be non-local. It cannot be linear. Your heart, your brain.
You mean it is parallel processing?
Parallel processing.
Okay.
All at the same time.
Yeah.
So that what we would call entanglement, in a sense.
Okay.
So, or synchronicity, everything happening all at once. It's creative, it's self-organizing, it's self-creating, self-evolving, and it's fundamental. There's nothing behind consciousness.
Yeah.
So it's without cause, it's not in space-time, it's formless, it can't be seen. So, if you look at some of the perennial philosophies, they say that which cannot be seen, but without which there is no seeing. That which cannot be heard, but without which there is no hearing.
Yeah.
Now, they go further and say, if you can see it, touch it, taste it, smell it, think about it, imagine it, describe it, it's not real. It's a projection. What is real is inconceivable, infinite, formless, indescribable.
If you think about it that way, the thing that comes closest to being a pure conscious, you would think will be a child who is just born.
Yeah, a child that's born has no idea that it has a body.
Yes.
It has no idea that this is called a book.
It has no idea what color this is. We teach them.
Well, it is experiencing a messy conglomeration of tastes, smells, colors, shapes, forms.
But it doesn't know, it doesn't describe them. We tell them it's yellow, this is green.
And it is one with its experience. There's no subject-object split. It's one process.
Yeah.
And actually, if you watch a child very carefully, it is full of wonder and curiosity.
Isn't that
and also innate joy.
Yes.
In other words, it's an expression of playfulness.
Yes.
Okay, and joy and curiosity and wonder and also love because it feels connected with all that is, without intellectualizing about it. So love is at that moment not a sentiment or an emotion. It's just what it is. I and the universe are one. Now I'm using words, but at that moment there's no subject and object split. So it's human constructs that create the subject-object split. And they also create anticipation of the future through imagination and regrets of the past. If you go to a safari, say,
But baby doesn't have any regret. Baby doesn't have any anticipation.
No resistance. And by the way, other species are like that. If you go to the safari in Africa, Tanzania, you'll see lions and antelopes all hanging out together at the wherever the food is or the water is, at the at the lake.
Water.
When the lion is hungry, the antelope sense that and they run. And then the lion or the tiger, whatever, it'll kill the weakest one of them. it'll bring the food, they'll feed, and then they're back to normal. There's the antelopes, the gazelles, and the lion are all sitting together peacefully. Yeah. There's no experience animosity to be held on to because they're totally in the present.
Yeah.
Okay, and that is actually how naturally life is, except for human beings.
Because they remember the past.
We regret the past, we anticipate the future. We also know intellectually that there's old age, infirmity, death.
Yeah.
So then around those fears, we build religious institutions, we create the idea of God, etc.
So we're going to hang on for a second. You go too fast here. So you brought in the word death and you brought in the word God. So let's talk just a little bit about those two subjects. What is the death?
It's happening right now. In every moment, experience is born and experience dies. So if I say, look at this and look at that, this experience is gone, that's born. So, okay, there's no continuity to experience. It's snapshots. Mm-hmm. So birth and death go together. If there wasn't death, there wouldn't be the birth of another experience. This is actually the true meaning of resurrection, birth and death in tandem all the time. If there was no death, we would all be doomed to eternal senility. This would be a museum and you would be a fossilized expression of this. Mm-hmm. The fact that we are alive is because birth and death are happening all the time.
So this is you saying internally in our body, the cells are dying, cells are born.
As you know, now that you're interested in biology, there's something called apoptosis, which is programmed cellular death.
Yes.
And if a cell forgets to die, we call it cancer.
Cancer, exactly.
So cancer is the loss of the memory of death for a cell. The cell normally, say stomach cell, liver cell, normally it is in total harmony with the activities of all the other cells, and it is in a way quantum entangled because, you know, the liver is not telling the heart, I'm going to send you blood which is free of toxins, even though it's doing that. The heart is pumping blood and it's not doing it for itself. So each cell in the body is in 100% harmony and cooperation with the other, and it also dies every few days. Stomach cells die every 5 days. Skin cells die once a month. Your skeleton is replaced every 3 months. The DNA, which we are told now holds the memories of millions of years of evolutionary time, the actual carbon, hydrogen, oxygen that makes up the DNA, it comes and goes every 6 weeks like migratory birds. So your body is the most abstract thing there could be because it's constantly
evolving,
recycling, and every cell is cooperating through birth and death simultaneously. If my cells, when the cells forget that,
then we get cancer.
Then you get cancer.
Okay, that's very interesting.
Death makes life possible.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
So let's now talk briefly about this concept of God. We created the concept of God. So we think that God created us, but the God believes we created him or her.
They're human constructs. God is a human construct, but so is the physical body a human construct. So is the human mind a construct. In reality, all there is, imagine a non-local field of awareness.
When you say non-local field, you mean there is no place, no location?
No location, no space, because if something has a border, then it's not infinite.
Okay.
So if something has no border, this has a border, this has a border. Even atoms and molecules have a border.
Yeah.
But if something has no border, then it has no location in space-time. This field is bubbling with what I would call qualia. Qualia means qualities of awareness. Qualities, which are species-specific, by the way. Okay, the qualia you experience is not the qualia, say, a bat is experiencing, or a snake.
Or ant is experiencing.
So there are species-specific qualia, and consciousness is bubbling. The qualia themselves have also no location in space-time. You say, where in the physical world is the color red? Where in the physical world is smell? Where is in the physical world is shape? These are, they don't have a location.
Aren't they in our brain?
Shapes and colors? You go inside the brain, it's like a banana. It's like a ripe banana, And it's mostly what we call fat and, proteins and carbohydrates, which are also constructs for modes of experience and knowing. But there's no experience in the brain. There are only neural correlates of experience. Or
where does experience reside?
Huh?
Where does experience reside? I mean, we experience it every day. It must reside somewhere.
Experience is born, experience dies.
Now, how do you remember it?
It's ungraspable.
But how do you remember
That's
it?
also the hard problem of consciousness. You don't remember. What you have is a current thought where you reconstruct a past experience. So memory is a reconstruction of a previous experience. And when you evoke the memory, so I say, do you remember the house that you lived in when you were a child? Do you remember when you were a teenager?
Yeah.
Okay. Where do you think there's a location in the brain which shows the shape and color of that house?
So it got created when you asked me the question.
When I asked you the question, a qualia appeared. Consciousness modified itself into a qualia, and it said that. So even when you hear, the great German philosopher Wittgenstein, he said, our life is a dream, we are asleep, but once in a while we wake up enough to know that we are dreaming. And why does he say that? Because every experience, if I asked you what happened to your childhood, you'd say it's gone. But if I asked you what happened to this morning, it's gone. If I asked you what's happened 5 minutes ago, it's gone. What happens to these words by the time you hear them?
They're gone.
They don't exist. So at this moment, you are experiencing a lucid dream in a vivid now. It's a dream. And once you wake up to what? That which is dreaming, which is consciousness. It is dreaming the mind, the body, and the universe.
So Deepak, before we go, I want you to talk about this wonderful book that you just wrote.
It's a very simple word. Meta means human. Meta means beyond. And human means the conditioned mind. That's all.
How do I thought humans were at the top of the totem pole. How can you be anything beyond the top of the top? We are the gods. How can be something beyond that?
In a sense, we are, because we can take any experience, create a construct, embed ourselves in the construct. We conceive, we construct, we embed ourselves, and we become the construct. So in that way, we are magicians. Without knowing how we do it, we are doing it. Okay, we created latitude and longitude, right? We created Greenwich Mean Time. We don't call it Botswana Mean Time, right? The Greenwich Mean Time is a relic of colonialism. We created money. I mean, there was a time where people said, I'll give you a haircut, you fix my shoes, okay? Or I'll give you my...
shell and you give me the horse.
So we created that. But then it kind of got elaborate. Wall Street, okay, colonialism, nation states, identity. This is all human creation.
So if somebody doesn't understand all the wonderful things you're talking about, you think they need to really read this book, because to me, this book really is about abundance. So the whole concept of Moonshot was, how do you create the world of abundance? The best way to do that is to really think of infinite possibilities.
Infinite possibilities, but also understand the mechanics of what we call insight, creativity, vision, possibilities, disruption. As if you're recycling the conditioned mind, you're not going to be creative, although you might be able to simulate creativity, which is what computers do. And computers don't have experience. They, but they can simulate it, right? But they can simulate it based on algorithms which are predictable. Now, there's a theorem, by the way, in mathematics. It's called Gödel's theorem. You probably know about it. But Gödel's theorem says there are theorems in mathematics which cannot be proved, which have no logic, but they are true in that they predict new algorithms. So every once in a while, if a mathematician is doing mathematical research, he's doing a series of formulas and one follows the other. Then at a certain point, what happens is the mathematician gets stymied. He doesn't know how to proceed. And then suddenly a new theorem appears, which has nothing to do with the previous theorem. Intuitively, the mathematician feels it's right. If he adopts that theorem, then he can create a new algorithm. But if he doesn't adopt it, it's gone.
Yeah.
So even mathematics is interrupted by disruptive theorems which are true but cannot be proved mathematically.
Yeah.
That's what Ramanujan, the great mathematician, I don't know if you saw this movie, The Man Who Knew Infinity.
And the guy who invented zero.
Yeah, and they couldn't, they would ask him, how do you get these theorems? And he would say, I don't know, which is actually basically a reinforcement of Gödel's theorem. Now, Gödel's theorem suggests that nature herself is disruptive. Okay, that, what we call evolution is not a progression, but a disruption.
Yeah.
The difference between Homo sapiens and a gorilla is less than 1% or 1% something, right?
Yeah.
And basically it's a sequential difference,
minor amount of DNA change.
Yeah, minor alterations. And yet we are totally two different species, okay? We share a common ancestor, but there was a break, there was a disruption. And one reached the end point of evolution, which many species, all species you see out there, have reached the end point.
I mean, you don't believe in the theory of evolution because it's not the Darwin really the idea that we really were gene mutated and we really became the evolutionary. It is really to some extent, part has always been the part of the consciousness and we create.
Well, I think evolution is driven by consciousness.
Yes.
I'm a minority. There are only very few scientists who believe that. So
explain your concept.
Well, according to Darwin, random mutations and natural selection. But Darwin, by the way, did not know anything about DNA or genetics or epigenetics or neuroplasticity. Absolutely. So he was focusing on natural selection. I do believe natural selection works. Okay, natural selection means the traits that are more helpful for the survival of the species, they survive. Okay. The traits. But who or what is it that wants to survive? I mean, do you think a mechanical device has the desire or the impulse or the aspiration to survive? Only consciousness will have that aspiration.
That's fair.
So, while natural selection is true, now that we know so much about how mutations occur and de novo mutations occur, and epigenetics, it's not only the mutation, it's the activity of the genes, and that these traits can be passed on to the next generation. We know that you take a mouse,
of course,
have him smell a certain pleasant smell, give it a mild electrical shock, the next 7 generations of mice will be scared of that smell. So where is that memory, right? Memory is in consciousness. It's not in a cryptographic code.
But what if when you argue that, some people would argue that that's actually stored in the DNA, that's actually is passed on to the next generation. So the memory of that shock could be stored in the DNA itself and it's modifiable.
So how is it stored? Where is it stored in the DNA? The DNA is just a sequence of nucleotides and base pairs. Where is memory? Where is insight? Where is intuition? Where is creativity? I once was at the museum in Russia, in St. Petersburg, the big museum, and I was standing next to James Watson, the man who discovered
of course, the DNA.
DNA. So I said, that painting over there, that painting over there, it came out of DNA. And he looked at me very arrogantly, and he said, yes, of course, where else? But DNA itself is a human construct for a particular mode of knowing in this particular microbe on planet Earth, somewhere in the junkyard of infinity.
Yes. That's a fair concept. So, guys, this has, as you can imagine, this has been an amazing conversation with the legendary Deepak Chopra. I want every one of you to go out there and buy this book called Metahuman. I am telling you, there is nothing that will change your life. You want to create a world of abundance? This is how you create the world of abundance. So every one of you, please go buy this book.
So abundance means infinite possibilities. And infinite means infinite. Nothing is left out. So even though the human species couldn't fly, it created constructs that created these jet planes, and we took a flight this morning.
So here's the thing. Now, if you could just look at the camera and give some advice people who would just watch this episode, if they could take away a few things from this, what would that be?
First of all, get rid of your habitual certainties. We know very little of what's going on through a very narrow band of perceptual activity interpreted through human constructs that have recycled for approximately 50,000 years. And so we take that to be reality, but it's not. It's our creation. Secondly, be grateful that you have a consciousness that can create new things that never existed before. That's what true creativity is. The creation of something that never, even an idea that didn't exist before. And then that idea generates itself into a storyline, and today's storyline is science, and it's a great adventure. But do not confuse science with scientism. A lot of so-called scientists are apostles of scientism, which is an ideology. That science
or religion.
Yeah. Thirdly, take time to reflect a little bit. Ask yourself, who am I? Have you ever asked, are you the changing body? If you are the body, then which one? You were a fertilized ovum, a zygote, a toddler, a baby, a teenager. Now you have this, and you say, I'm this body. Well, this is an experience you're having. And when you say mind, if I asked you, what were you thinking last Tuesday at 4:45?
I don't know.
You don't know. Most of your thoughts, therefore, are unimportant. If you can't remember your thoughts...
I was probably thinking about you, Deepak, if I was really going to guess.
See, every thought we have is recycle somebody else's thought. So, the ability to think is an extraordinary ability, but the ability to not think is even more important. Because when you stop the thinking process, that's where creativity, that's where disruption occurs. So take time to not think. And if you think, be reflective, not dogmatic. Ask meaningful questions. Who am I? What do I want? What's my purpose? What am I grateful for? And then try and figure out who it is that wants to know the answers to these questions. If you live the questions, you will move into the answers. The question contains the answer.
Well, as they say, to be a great entrepreneur, you have to ask the right question. It's not about having the right answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
What an amazing. Thank you.